Alright, hey everyone. On Friday I made some booster packs for the Tesla project by Goblin Artisans, which I am the kind of director, lead designer thing of. And people really liked them. They really liked them. I got a lot of people asking whether I could make booster packs for them. Well, I can't make booster packs for everyone, but I can show you kind of what I did for it. Now, this is going to be kind of like a cooking show in that most of the stuff I make is going to be pre-made on the stream. What I'm recording right now, I've already done the pack, and I'm just going to show you the steps I did to do it. So don't feel like I'm a genius expert here. I spent hours experimenting, trying things, getting pictures, deciding they didn't work, blah, 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 blah. And honestly, it's mostly dumb luck and serious experimentation that produce good results with stuff like this. I am not a Photoshop expert, and I do not know much about this. On Friday, I didn't have half the plugins I had now, and I didn't have any of the knowledge I have now. I just sat down and decided I know a little bit about Photoshop. I'll try to do this, and turns out I learned a lot about Photoshop, or rather, in my case, Paint.net, which is what I use. It's a free alternative to Photoshop. So the really nice thing is that Paint.net has a lot of good resources online, just as Photoshop does, and Paint.net has a lot of plugins online, which mostly just do things that Photoshop can already do, but some of them do cool stuff. So whenever I was like, how do I do that? Boom, I Google it, I can find it. That's my #1 piece of advice. So if you want to make a booster pack like this, learn to Google a lot. And also just learn to fiddle with buttons. You're not going to explode your computer by trying new things out. If you just do something because you think it might work, it might work. And try to think a little creatively. You know, if you want to get rid of shadows, try to think, what is it that makes a shadow in a picture? How can I use that to my advantage? Well, anyway, that's enough pre-talk. Let's actually start going over what I did. So this is a template. I made this template when I made the Tesla booster pack, and I kept it because I decided that, one, I wanted to make more booster packs in the future, and two, I could share it with you guys. So it comes with this backing booster texture, and well, rather the booster itself. This backing booster, there's a way to blend onto it, and that uh, basically lets you do some really neat stuff. Uh, you basically just delete everything that is not the black stuff, and you'll be able to make this look like this, where you have a texture behind this stuff, and boom, you got this really neat looking booster pack already. Now, of course, this would not make you buy a set. This has nothing on it. You have no idea what the set's about. So that's what the art is for. Now, this should be a good hint to people about what set I made a booster pack for. Zervins asked first, and he was online when I decided to make this tutorial, so he got first come, first served. So this is the porthole, as I call it. It might not necessarily be called that. Basically, this method of a booster pack, you just put the art of the card on it. Some booster packs do this interesting transparency thing where all this background stuff will fade away and it mixes with the booster pack, but that's hard, and I don't want to spend forever, one, figuring out how to do that, and two, doing it. Like, I know how to do it, but it's really tough to figure out how to do it well. So I didn't. I just decided to make a porthole. And this looks pretty neat already. This is actually dumb luck, by the way. This was not intended to be what it looked like, so I'm very happy that it came out this way. This layer, I'll show off all the layers, I guess. This layer is the delete layer. When you're putting art and stuff for the porthole, you're going to get it going out of the bounds of the booster pack. So you're going to want to go back to the booster layer, and you'll select everything. This little magic one will select it. And then when you go up here, you'll fill that in with black or whatever, and that just helps you, one, see what it looks like when you're actually rendering the booster. You'll get to go, oh, that's what it would look like if all this stuff wasn't sticking out of it. And two, later on, it lets you selectively delete the stuff you don't want to show up. These next few layers are going to be the logo. So, yeah, this is the final hint if nobody got it. The logo is built of a few parts in this one. There's a glow effect. That's not always necessary for a set. It looks nice, but it's not super necessary. The reason the glow is here is because this is a very light booster pack back. So I wanted to make sure that it would pop. You can use shadows in most booster packs, especially ones like the Return to Ravnica style. With mine, I made it a mix of Return to Ravnica and Avacyn Restored, so I used just a dark outline. But this one's good for the lighter backgrounds. The next step is this outline. Obviously, without the outline, you can barely read it, so the outline keeps white and black. And remember, white and black is how you want to do font. You either do black and white or white and black, but, you know. The next one, it's not actually visible. I'll take this off for a second. This was the beginning logo piece. You can't even see it if I do that. So this is just pure black. Pure black. But there's no outline. You see that difference? It's a lot thinner. This is what I used for textures and stuff. That actually looks kind of nice on its own. But that's what I used to build the rest of this. The outline was built around it, then this cool little texture was built around that. And I'll show off how to make this texture later. Next up, there's this age layer. That's literally the H13 Plus. That's just to look really official, even though it says unofficial here for legal reasons. Then there's a bunch of logos. So I took some of my favorite logos from recent times, and I put them on here. So you can make it yourself. It's pretty nice. So I got the Modern Event logo, which I call Blue Steel after my favorite male model. We got the black 2015 logo, I think it was. We got the bronze from the Vault logo with a little glow effect. We got this gray 2013. We got the current amber logo, and then we got the classic red and gold. I don't have the blue logo just because it's so old that nobody's probably going to use it, but I might add it in if someone wants it. So this is the final product. Just like I said, this is like a cooking show. I have the final product and I've got it all ready, but I'm going to show you some of the steps I used to get to that product. So this one I like a lot. This was used to build the texture here. So, well, I'm going to start with the texture because it's a pretty easy one to show off. I could start with the background or whatever, but I'll just do this. So for the texture here, I wanted to make something a little interesting looking. So I knew I wanted some warmer colors because I had already decided on the background being this background. So I knew I wanted some warmer colors. So what I did was I went to here and I found this smoldering ashes. I thought this would have a pretty nice mix of colors, blue and red. I thought it would have this nice darker edges to it to give this a little more darkness because I needed it to pop a bit. So I did that. Now, I wanted to get a little painterly look because Ainair, for those who don't know, is an artist theme set that has multicolor themes. So I wanted lots of colors and I wanted to look kind of artsy. And I also wanted to look different than a normal booster pack, a little ethereal maybe, just because Ainair is a very abstract plane in some ways, a beautiful plane as well. So I wanted to have that kind of off-worldly beauty. So here in the distort section, this comes natively with most Photoshop style things, and it's AndPaint.net. Anything with this is a plugin. So if I use a plugin, I'll let you know, and I'll hover over this so you can see where I got it in some cases. But Crystallize. So Crystallize makes these things pop up. It basically is a really nice way of pixelating it, and I did it because it looks kind of like an oil painting. There is actually an oil painting artistic effect, but it didn't have the coarseness I was hoping for. Like, even at a high brush size, it was a little too, like, it was either too soft or too rough, but I wanted a little more geometry to it, maybe to look a little crystalline. So, haha. But I went to the store, went to Crystallize, and I did this. So you can bump it up as much as you want. I thought it was pretty fair, around 12-ish, like that. So if you notice here, I didn't think this was enough color. If you look here, there's a lot of color there, actually. There's a lot of color. So what I did was, I took what I have now, and I did this. I rotated it. Now I've got the color a little more evenly spread. Now, this is a really useful, so there's blend properties here, and I'll show these off. Multiply means that darker things get darker, brighter things get brighter, stuff like that. Additive was what I went with, if I remember correctly. But I'll show off the other ones. Additive literally adds. It takes the value and makes it. So things usually get brighter with additive. Color burn really is like a dark. Color dodge is a lot like additive, but it like avoids the same hues. So this one also looked really nice, but I don't think I went with it. I don't know what a lot of these do. I just kind of decided which one looked the best. Difference seems pretty clear. Whatever is different between the two, it inverts it. Negation takes the inverse. This looks really good, but there's all these green things popping up, so I don't want those. Lighten will take, well, anything that's lighter gets lighter. Darken is the same, but makes it darker. I don't know what screen does, but it looks pretty good. It looks a little smoky though. I don't want it to be gray, and that is exclusive ore. So if it's one or the other, it gets rid of it. Stuff like that. So if I remember correctly, I went with probably additive. So I like what additive looks like. Now what I would do is I'll show this off. I'm gonna make a new layer and I'll type in some text. Hi everyone. So I just used the text tool for this, and I'm gonna make it a little bigger, like maybe 70. That looks good. So if I want to give a texture to some text, the way you do that is I select everything that is not the text, and I'm going to use global for that. See the little globe? So everything that is not a text is selected. Now I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to blend these two. Yeah, and now I'm going to mix them with this button, merge layer down. So now they're the same layer. Now I'm going to delete everything that is not that text. Boom. We got a nice little thing here. So using the text I already had, now it's time to make this legible. You could not read that on a white booster pack, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Object and give it an outline. Now this is obviously an important step. You want to be able to read the cards, you know. You want to be able to read the booster pack. So I give it a pretty nice little outline. Now I'm going to give it a really big outline this time. Now I'm going to copy it, put it on a new layer. Then I'm going to go back, undo that, and I'm going to copy it, put it on another layer. And I'm going to invert this one. So this is what's going to give me that glow effect I liked. I really wanted a glow effect. But I still need an outline. So I'm going to go back and just do the outline again. This time it's going to be a lot smaller. So see how it's so big? Now let's make it a little tighter. I'll up the strength. So we got a pretty thick outline and the radius will be pretty small. So strength is the darkness. It's how dark it is, how non-transparent. Like, the less strength, the more easily it goes to transparency. Radius will make it get big. See that? That's the actual range of it. So that looks pretty good to me. Now I'm going to test out to see what that looks like. I'll go down, and I'm going to paint on the back layer. Yeah, there's a nice glow effect to that. You see that? So it'll glow and pop on the final booster. So the frame was an important little bit. The frame, I decided very early on that I wanted the porthole to be a frame. It's an art set after all. So this one, I started with a frame I found on Google Images. I tried to pick stock photos that had like Creative Commons or whatever, but honestly, there's so much editing going on here that I doubt there's going to be that much licensing issues, and this is a non-profit thing. If something asks you to take it down, you will probably, but it's not hard to find a replacement, so it's kind of like how we use custom art in our set. So Control Y is the undo. So next, I did the oil painting. Oil painting shows up in Artistic, as we saw. It's a native one, so if you download this, it comes with that. So oil painting softened it. If you go back, you'll notice that had a lot of detail. I did not want that detail. It looks way too realistic. Also, I got rid of the watermark a little bit. So I wanted less detail, so I went to oil painting. Next, I'm going to select everything that is white, and I'm going to change the tolerance. The tolerance is how much of it's selected. So really high tolerance will do that. Once I've selected everything that is not white, I delete it. So that's it. That's all I had to do. Like, that looks good. I could make it a little more oily, maybe. Just a little more oily. Yeah, sure. All that good. There we go. So, a little more oily. Okay, so that's an oil painting. Done. If you notice, it ended up inverted. That's just because I thought it looked better. I flipped it as well, because I thought this one would be nicer underneath the logo, and that one would be nicer above. But really, not too big serious of differences. I inverted it later. So what happened was, my next step was this. I had this gold dish. So once I put this here, I wanted to make this stuff have a little more going on. I wanted it to not be blank, 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 blank. So I got the idea to make a gold dish on both sides to give it this cool band effect. But it wasn't working because there was this shadowy bit here. It had way too much realistic 3D depth. And I did not want depth on a booster pack. You don't want depth. You want it to look flat, artistic. You can have a little bit of depth, but you don't want it to look like it's sinking into the booster pack. It's really disorienting to look at. So instead, I decided I was going to try to get rid of the shadows. And this is an example of my experimentation. So when I was trying to get rid of shadows, I'll have to do this again. When I decided to get rid of shadows, I made a circle. The circles are really hard in this program because they just never like to really organize that well. They're a lot easier when you do them this way, but you'll notice that the edges are never going to be perfect. Yeah, like that edge goes a little high, so I need to lower that, blah blah blah. This isn't even a perfect circle. Anyway, I did this, And I went down here and I was just gonna get rid of that shadow. So my idea was, how do you get rid of shadows? Well, like we talked about earlier, Alpha Mask is useful. I think I mentioned Alpha Mask. So Alpha Mask, what Alpha Mask does, that's not what I intend to do, but that looks really cool. What Alpha Mask does, it takes the darkest parts of a picture and it makes them the transparent part. So if I copy this, and I'll show you what it looks like. Well, first I'm going to delete everything that is not the outside bit. I didn't care about the outside. So I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to put it on another layer so I can save it for later, because that's what I was trying to do at the time. I got rid of it, but we don't know that yet. And I'm going to copy this. So we're going to see what happens. I'm just experimenting. I want these to go away. I want them to be less intense. So once I have it copied onto my clipboard, I can go to Alpha Mask. Paste from clipboard will get rid of it on the clipboard. And I can do that, but it transparentizes. You see that? So it's not perfect. My idea was I would brighten up I would fix up the inside and everything, but it wasn't working that well. Inverting the mask would do the opposite effect. It would make everything on the inside go away and the outside stay there. So I was trying to do that, but it didn't work. So I tried, okay, what if I inverted the color? What if I invert the color of this part? Get this. And then when I did the Alpha Mask, it looks really sick. I'll see if I can replicate the effect. Basically, I was trying to emphasize. Yeah, you can see I was getting rid of it. Sometimes I invert it. The invert mask will, but when I did this and I was taking care of some stuff, it ended up looking really cool. I adjusted the brightness and contrast because I wanted to emphasize. Yeah, see that? I wanted to get this to pop a lot. And when I was doing that, it started looking really neat. It looked really neat. And I made a mistake here, if I remember correctly. When I did this, I did Alpha Mask, Invert Mask. And you can't see it here, but it looks like it's harder to see, but it looks really cool. And secretly, if you notice, this bit is this bit. So when I saw that, I immediately went, and I was doing it over here, so I saw it immediately. I was like, that looks way better. That looks way better. I'll just get rid of everything. And that's what happened here. I basically, I went to I went to the Alpha Mask, and I inverted the mask, and I got this nice fade in transparency effect. Notice as it gets brighter, when when I do the Alpha Mask, I invert it, so now brightness becomes darkness, and that darkness becomes transparent. So it fades really nicely into the background, very, very nicely. So I really liked that effect. And it looked much more ethereal than just gold. Gold was just too solid. This looked a lot more ethereal. I went for it. And that was dumb luck. Like I said, dumb luck. I was trying things out. I need to get rid of these shadows. How do I get rid of shadows? And I thought, dumb luck, get rid of it by things that are dark become transparent, so shadows go away. Ended up stumbling across this really cool inversion effect that looked really neat and ethereal. So with this one was the background, and it's kind of funny we're starting with the beginning. I knew that I wanted a rainbowy background. When me and Zervins talked about what we could possibly do, we decided immediately that I wanted a rainbowy background. And a rainbowy background I thought opals. Opals are rainbowy. We thought of other stuff, but we didn't want it to look intense. We wanted a subtle rainbow. Well, this is a really cool background I found, but it was way too colorful. Like, this could work for a booster pack, maybe, but it pops a lot. So I thought, how can I not make this pop? So, again, Alpha Mask is the answer. I put a white background there because I do want it to fade into white. The colors that are a little intense over here, I want them to go away. So I went into brightness, and I lowered it quite a bit. I also increased the contrast. So let's show this off the other way. If I start from normal and I lower brightness, it just ends up dark. Everything will fade equally. If I make it brighter, everything won't fade, right? If I increase contrast, it's a little too sharp of a difference. So I wanted to also lower brightness. Now, it turns out I didn't have to do too much work here. I don't remember exactly the number I used, but you'll see it looks close enough to the background. So I did something like this, just a random guess. Something like this would look good to me. I think this is a solid start. So I take that, I copy it, and I put it onto my Alpha Mask, and I go here. And I don't need to invert the mask. And you can see that looks a lot like what ended up on the booster pack. So I did end up pretty close. Yeah, you can even recognize some of the patterns. So like here, you can kind of see it over here, you know? So that's how I got that nice simplistic background. And really, that's it. It's a 20-minute long video at this point, but you get the idea. For my booster pack, I'll show that off. I'll open it up real quick, and that way we can see the layers and everything that I used. So here's all my stuff. Here's the Tesla booster pack. So what happened here was I used much of the same effects. Like, let's zoom in so I can show this off. Here's my porthole. I picked a porthole from a boat. I took the porthole window of a boat and I made it into my my window, and it worked out really well. It looks really good. It even had the right colors. The background was originally going to be more blue, but in experimenting, I found that purpley blue looked better. It's harder to see on the finalized product. I didn't emphasize it enough, unfortunately, but there is filigree texture to this logo. I made it look a little metallic. It looks a lot better when you see it up close. You see that? I should have made it pop more. So what I did here for the filigree, I wanted it to pop, but only the middle parts. So I upped the brightness and contrast a bunch. That way the metal, the brighter parts would pop, and the other parts would not. So that worked out really nicely in my opinion. Let's figure out what layer filigree is. I'm gonna get rid of this. So there we go. The filigree's right here. Yeah, filigree's right here. I did this in a separate window. I found an image of filigree. I made a gradient. We'll talk about that in a second. It's a really useful tool. So made a gradient to go over it because most logos have a nice gradient to them. And then I emphasized the brightness contrast. So I'll show off what that looks like real quick. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. So here, I select it, and I'm going to emphasize the brightness and contrast. So you can already see, if I want these to pop, I'm going to up the difference. And I'm going to lower the bright. So if you lower the brightness, you get this more of a contrasting effect, which looks pretty good. The problem is they're too similar here, so that's exactly the problem. But you can see the metal parts are popping, everything else goes away. That's completely okay. What's going to happen is we want those parts to be darker because they won't actually affect the gradient once we do an alpha mask. Only these parts will matter. So the gradient, I'll do that in a separate window in a second, but it's really handy. Make a new window. Gradient is right here next to the paint bucket, and most things can support it as well. So let's see what colors I got. Let's make okay, green and black. So a gradient will do this. Looks nice. If you start here and you end over here, it gets more gradual. If I go real quick, it gets more intense. So you usually want them to be a little gradual. Now for the logo, it actually reflects a little bit. You want them to reflect. If it goes straight down, it looks too flat. You don't want things to be perfectly flat, but you don't want them to be too deep as well. So that's why we're going to do that. So to do the gradient a little better, what I did was, there are options here for reflect and everything. Like if I did this, problem I don't like this, it literally reflects it. Like, I don't like how it does that. You can see that it's just a straight line. So another way to do it, and the way that I personally did it, because I like it this way, is I went for the alpha mask method. And I like this method a lot. If I want to make a wider reflecting gradient, I'm going to make one that has the depth that I like. Oh, whoops, I not have it reflect. Yeah, so I'm going to make one that has the depth that I want. So like, let's make it about here. I like that. That looks good. Now I'm going to make another one that has the depth that I want on the other layer, because it's so big that it'll actually take up the entire layer. You see that? It immediately cuts away everything else. Now if I copy this and I apply an alpha mask to it, you can see that this went away. If I take it away, you can see it's only fading away now. That's the really useful part of alpha masks. Black gradients become gradient transparencies, and you can do that to a lot of stuff in really useful ways. So There we go. Now the green is coming in on the black on the other side, and it looks a lot better. That's how I would do it over here. It won't. You have to make the gradient, and then you also have to make a black version of the gradient to get this nice effect. So wherever the orange is here, there was black there at one point. And I had a flat orange effect, and then, well, the flat like dark orange, and then these two golden oranges were part of this alpha gradient I made. Because if I do, show it off. If I take this entire thing and I apply the alpha mask to it, see how it fades here? That's where I put that this golden orange. That looked a lot better. The metal filigree, yep, it's alpha mask. I took this metal filigree texture and I faded it away. So it fades in. It ended up a little strong on the edges. I should have made it not show up as much, but it looks fine in the long run. The art, we'll go over that real quick. It's not super complicated. What you do is you have your art and it'll look big. Let me get the actual original art for this card. In fact, the art's actually too small. See that? So I made it bigger, but let's make it really big and you'll get to see what I'm talking about. Yeah, okay, that looks good. Sure. So it's not going to be right. Now, when you do this, I basically just went here and I just select everything that's outside my porthole and I delete it. Oh yeah, see, I was on global. That's the problem. I select everything outside of my porthole and I delete it. There you go. Now, the problem you'll notice is that the background is actually showing up where I didn't want it to show up. Ideally, I already combined everything to finalize the product. Ideally, you would have these layers separate, so like any transparencies won't cause problems, but it's not too big of a deal. So for example, I had this frame separate for the longest time. You want to keep your circle frame separate. That way you can delete the extra art. I forgot to do, so I am going to have to redo this all with this one, and I can show you that. I'll make a separate, and I'll call it porthole frame. That way if nobody else makes the same forgetting mistake I did. Let's vertically real quick, because I forgot to do that. Colors. Stick it right there. And so it actually stayed the same verticality. I just squeezed it to make better band. And there we go. So wherever I select outside of the range of my frame and I delete the art there. Now, I did this really quickly, so we're going to be able to show off what's bad about this. What's bad is, compare this to the original art that I had, it doesn't look good. I'm going to copy and paste this porthole frame so I don't lose it when I go back. But if you compare it to the original art, what's the difference? The difference is, with the original art, I made sure that the head was more in the center. Now, there was nothing super bad about the other art, it was fine, but you want heads to be around here. This is the best place for head. This art is not the best for a pack. It's fine, it looks good, and it's actually interesting, but ideally with packs, you want something more like, let me show it off. You want something more like, that's not an image. You want something more like that. Wow, that's a weird. But you want the things that have big faces on them, big friendly faces, cool action poses, and you generally want one from each color, or at least you want to represent each color. So, for example, with planeswalkers that share a color in sets, they often will show all you. Oh yeah, you always want to show your planeswalkers too, but you have your planeswalkers, and then they'll count as multiple colors. And multicolored cards do the same thing. So, like for Battle for Zendikar, if I remember correctly, there was no green card represented. There was just Gideon. I know there was a green card, but it was Kiora. She was green-blue. So because they did green-blue, they got to do Gideon. I can't remember his name, but I love him, and it's really bugging me. The black demon guy, Obnixilis, that's him. And then there was an Eldrazi, because of course. And there was an ally, because of course. So the colors are roughly represented, and the set's themes are roughly represented. So if we go back to the Tesla project, you'd see that I got green-blue. I have green-blue. I have red-white. I have white and blue and red, because that's kind of a Thopter. We didn't have great Thopter art, but that's close enough. It's a flying guy. That's what matters. I got Chandra, because she's the only planeswalker we have confirmed for the set. and I have black. So I got all the colors. I got a planeswalker. Ideally, we'd have more planeswalkers, but we don't actually have art for them. So, and I got the major themes, and of course, Canister Researcher, the green blue one, has a canister, or at least he should. But that's the canisters, the Thopters, the Revolution because she's a rebel, and the bad guys. So we got everyone represented. That's the important part. That's what really matters here, is that we got everyone represented on the cards. So I can't really think of much more that I need to share. This happened out pretty well. We got everything really represented. And I think with this, you might not be able to make an amazing booster pack. You'll probably make booster packs about my quality or so. Because, like, this is not an amazing booster pack. It obviously looks made by a fan. Like, that logo is not good. I made that with basic text, you know. Oddspot's really good at logos, if I remember correctly. He made an awesome logo for Imago. I think that's the one. But it's good enough to at least look semi-professional and look really nice on a website, really cool on an article. You know, if you want to make something pop, this is a good way to do it. It's a little impressive to be able to see, wow, they have an official booster pack. Sorry, an official, unofficial booster pack. So hopefully this was helpful. I've hit 30 minutes, so you guys are probably done. Most people probably left a long time ago. But thanks for listening, and I hope at least some of this helps.